Today is February 7th. Lee County Board of County Commissioners zoning agenda and hearing will take place. If we could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I apologize. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Good morning, all. I'm Kevin Ruane. I'm the vice chair, so I'll be sitting in as Mike Greenwell isn't here. Just some things just to remind people, the last couple of zoning hearings of the passion. I appreciate everyone's passion, but we do have rules of civility here. You're not supposed to raise your voice, yell, scream. The last meeting just got to a point where it was unhealthy. We have respect for you. I'd expect the same for you to have respect for us. If there is issues that I feel that are unwarranted, I'm just going to be very kind and let you know up front. I'm going to ask the officer to have you removed from here. It's just an area that we need to obviously respect, and that's all I'm asking for you. When you come up, you're going to state your name. You have 3 minutes for the record. You start to wind you'll go through a green light, a yellow light, and a red light. At the yellow light, you should start to wind up your comments. There's an awful lot of people here. I want to give everyone an opportunity to speak. So I just want to review those things with everyone. If you hadn't been here before, it's just, in all due respect, respect both sides, from you and from us. So with that in mind, I'll introduce the first case.
Good morning, Commissioners. Badam Chin Charam will present the first and second cases.
Good morning. Sharam Badam Chin from Lee County Zoning. The first case is Red Jacket Country Lakes, IPD. They are requesting to rezone 6.8 acres from agricultural to IPD to allow for up to about 95,000 square feet of mini warehousing. And the property is located along Country Lake Drive. The future land use designation is urban community. And hearing examiner heard this case and recommended approval of the case. They are not requesting any deviations. There was one participant of record for this case.
Any questions for staff? No. Applicant?
Good morning, Commissioners. Terry Kramer on behalf of Wilbur Smith. We have a presentation. We have our project team here if you have any questions. We'll waive the rest of our time to see if you guys have any questions to make a decision, but thank you for having us here. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I have one participant, Debbie Grover. Is Debbie here? Debbie Grover. Is Debbie here? Okay, I'm going to close participation. It's the only one I had noted for the record.
Mr. Chairman?
I have a motion on the floor.
I'll second.
I have a second. Motion by Commissioner Hammond, second by Commissioner Sandelli. Any discussion? Any objections? Motion carries unanimously. Item number 2.
Again, Sharam Badam Chin from Lee County Zoning. This is a remand case. You may recall this case was heard by this board February 8th of last year, a year ago. And it was remanded to HECS for lot sizes, lot dimensions, property development regulations, and compliance with LEAP Plan Policy 5.1.5. The request was to amend an existing plan development, 129 acres plan development, residential plan development, to increase the number of units from 160 to 258. And as you can see, the future land use designation is outlined suburban, and it's surrounded by rural community preserve. At the remand hearing, the applicant proposed two master concept plans. One, the original master concept plan with some changes, and another one, a new master concept plan. They called it alternate master concept plan. And for the alternate master concept plan, they reduced the number of units by 10, and they provided two types of lots, perimeter lots, which are larger lots. They are known as R2 lots. They are 13,600 square feet each in area, minimum lot width 80, lot depth 170, and as you can see, they increased the lot sizes and setbacks for all lots, especially the lot R2 lot that did not exist at the original hearing. They created two sets of lots. R2 lots are the perimeter lots, and R1 lots are internal. And the original master concept plan had the drainage easement, which bisects the property here, moved to the side, to the west. And with this plan, with the alternate plan, they are keeping it where it's at. They are providing additional easements to widen the drainage easement and providing access easement also for that. Basically, right now, the easement we have is 30 feet. They are increasing it to 60. Staff, hearing examiner heard the remand case and found both cases, the revised master concept plan and the alternate one, compliant with the Land Development Code and LEA plan. Staff recommendation was for the alternate master concept plan, and the applicant agreed with staff, and they're only proposing this master concept plan at this time. The reason staff prefers this is the drainage that they were moving it to the perimeter of the lot. It was going to be kind of high maintenance drainage easement, having culverts and going through wetlands area. But here, the easement is staying where it was at. It's just being expanded. And basically, for lot sizes, they increased the lot sizes. Lot dimensions, they increased it. Development regulation, they increased it. And for policy 5.1.5, see if I, okay. It says protect existing and future residential areas from any encroachment of uses that are potentially destructive to the character and integrity of the residential environment. What they are proposing a residential single-family subdivision. And it's understood that residential single-family is compatible with residential single-family regardless of the size of the lots. So they are not proposed, this policy actually was intended for industrial and commercial and other types of uses that may negatively impact integrity of the residential environment. Developing the property with residential development, residential single-family development should not negatively impact the residential environment. With that said, they are proposing additional buffers. As you can see, they are proposing some areas 45-foot buffers, some areas 30-foot buffers. Technically, there is no buffer requirement between single family and single family. So they are proposing this buffers because of policy 20.1.6, which asks for providing buffers to make it more compatible when it's adjacent to rural community preserve. It doesn't say what type of buffer, it just says buffers will be provided. And they are complying with that, and usually residential single family, if even the buffer is required, is minimal. In here, they are providing very large buffers. And we had a condition number 6, which required them to relocate the easement. That condition needs to be changed now that they are proposing to keep the drainage easement in the middle of the development, bisecting the development. Just the change in the language saying that they have to provide additional easement for a total of 60 foot. With that said, that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, or applicant has a presentation, I believe.
Any questions for staff at this point?
I have a question. For the remand, I know there's a couple different diagrams here. So which one are they really looking at using to move forward with? Some different options as far as the plans?
This is the option that applicants wants to move forward with, which is staff's preferred option. There is also this master concept plan, which will also work, but as you can see in here, the drainages move to the west, and that complicates maintenance of that easement, and it does not accomplish anything but provide an additional cost then to the county to maintain the easement.
Okay. And I think also the applicant probably will go over what changes they made during the remand too, so.
Sure, they will do that.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
If the applicant can come up.
Good morning, Commissioners. Let me just get my presentation up here. All right, so once again, good morning, Commissioners. For your record, my name is Richard Aiken. I'm an attorney with Henderson Franklin here in Fort Myers. I'm here representing the applicant on DCI 2021-00001, which is the Orange River RPD. So as Mr. Bonamshin indicated when he was up here just a minute ago, you remanded this case in February of 2023 to the hearing examiner to consider 4 things, really. Those 4 things were policy 5.1.5, the lot sizes on the property, the lot dimensions, and the property development regulations. We went back to the hearing examiner on remand in May of 2023. As part of that process, the hearing examiner directed staff to prepare a supplemental memorandum and to provide suggestions to address the board issues that you had raised on remand. She also directed the applicant to respond to staff's recommendations, and we did that. And when we did that, we did 2 things. All right. So number 1, as Mr. Bonamshin said, we offered changes to the site plan that you had already seen in order to address the issues on remand. The second thing we did was we proposed an entirely alternative new site plan to try to address those issues that were raised on remand. Today, just to make it abundantly clear, we are asking for approval of the alternate plan that was submitted to HEX on remand, because that is the plan that staff is in agreement with. That is the plan that ultimately does a few things, and I'll walk you through what those are. So number 1, it reduced the density to 248 units, so it's a reduction in density. Secondarily, it increased the lot sizes around the perimeter of the project to a minimum of 13,600 square feet. So that was one of the issues that the board raised last time, was lot sizes. So what we did was we specifically looked at those, and in the alternate site plan we're proposing here today, we increased lot sizes around the perimeter of the property. There was also a significant amount of discussion last time by the board about setbacks. There was concerns about setbacks between lot lines. Side setbacks specifically was discussed at length. So we increased those setbacks around the perimeter lots. We increased them to 10 feet in order to try to address those concerns. The alternate site plan, as Mr. Bonamshin also said, requires a 30-foot wide landscape buffer along perimeter roadways. It also requires a 40-foot 45-foot wide landscape buffer any place that the plan abuts any existing residential lots. All right? The Land Development Code does not require buffers between residential. All right, so these buffers are added as part of this plan in order to try to address the compatibility concerns, the issues on remand that were raised by the board. We also are leaving the existing conveyance ditch in its exact same location that it sits today. You heard, I think, at the last hearing that the ditch does not actually fit within the existing easement that's there, so we are proposing to, as part of this plan, give the county an additional easement in order to fit the ditch and to fit access for the county in order for maintenance. The hearing examiner did find the alternate plan to be consistent with the Lee County Comprehensive Plan and the Land Development Code. And again, these changes have been made specifically to address the concerns. So you can see the alternate site plan here before you, all right? This is the site plan. You can see that we have a few things. You can see the R2 lots around the outside are a minimum of 13,600 square feet. You can see the existing conveyance ditch staying in the same location, and the side setbacks have been increased. There is an existing residential plan development that is in place on this project. You can see that MCP here before you. You see on this MCP the ditch is in the same location, so the ditch is not going to change. We are going to increase the easement so that it fits. The existing plan provides for residential lots that actually abut the perimeter of the property. So one of the changes that we're making as part of the alternate plan is that we're adding a buffer around the perimeter of the property instead of just having residential lots abutting the streets and abutting the other residential lots that would be outside of that. So the existing plan doesn't provide for a separate buffer. Our alternate plan that we're proposing before you here today does have a separate buffer, those 30-foot buffers and 45-foot buffers that we discussed. We're also leaving the ditch, as I said. There was testimony from the public at the last hearing. There was concern from many members of the public that there would be upstream flooding issues if we moved the ditch. And originally, the site plan that we were here in front of you before proposed the conveyance to go around the outside like this. So there was concern that if we did that, there would be flooding issues upstream. So we listened to that. We're going to leave the ditch exactly where it is. And staff had maintenance concerns about the ditch, so we're also addressing that by leaving it where it is and adding additional easement. I just want to provide you with a little bit of historical background regarding this parcel. I know that you heard it the last time we were here, but I do think it bears repeating because it is probative to many of the issues that we're going to talk about here today. So in 1991, or I'm sorry, in 1990, this property was included in the future land use of the outlying suburban when the Lee Plan was first enacted. In 1991, and at that time in 1990, it was allowed 3 dwelling units per acre. That was the density allowed on the property. In 1991, the Buckingham Rural Community Preserve future land use was created for the first time in the Lee Plan. This property was not included within the Buckingham Rural Community Preserve at the time that the Lee Plan created the future land use. It's never been in that future land use, all right? So a lot of the discussion we've heard from the public, a lot of the discussion that we've had on remand, and even the first time at the board, surrounded the Rural Community Preserve future land use. This property's not in it. It's never been in it, even from the inception of that. The existing zoning on the property is from 2005, and that's an RPD. It allows for 160 units. That was in 2005. The future land use was changed to sub-outlying suburban, which is the existing future land use on the property in 2005 as well. You can see before you, this is a copy of the future land use map. So the property is within the limits of the Buckingham Community Plan. And again, it's not the Rural Community Preserve. The property, as you can see, is outlined in the black here with the yellow showing sub-outlying suburban. You can see that the Buckingham Community Plan is the dashed line, the black line that's around the outside here that includes that. You can see that the Buckingham Community Plan doesn't contain any other property that is not, or I'm sorry, that is in the sub-outlying suburban future land use category. Most of the property in the Buckingham community planning area is actually within the Rural Community Preserve future land use. This property is not, so it's very unique in that nature, all right? I've heard it referred to as the hole in the donut, so to speak, but it is not Rural Community Preserve. It's the only sub-outlying suburban within Buckingham planning community. The county made that decision not to place the property in the Rural Community Preserve and not to subject the property to the restrictions of the Rural Community Preserve future land use. That was a policy decision that was made years ago, and that's how it has existed and how the property owner holds it today. This application is compliant with the regulations that actually apply to the property, which is sub-outlying suburban and the other requirements of the Lee County Comprehensive Plan. In order to require this property, or if you were to require this property to actually be compliant with the Rural Community Preserve future land use, that would be inconsistent with the Lee County Plan because it's not in that future land use. As we discussed, we went back to the hearing examiner on remand, and I just want to talk a little bit about the hearing examiner's recommendation. There's a few points that I think are important. She addressed the alternate plan in her recommendation on remand. She noted that the alternate master concept plan includes dense vegetative buffers along the project perimeter to maintain scenic vistas for the traveling public. She also noted that the alternatives offered at remand are consistent with the Lee County Plan, and that was both alternatives. We're only here before you today on this alternate plan that I've shown you here. She also stated that the county's land development regulations suggest that when a proposed project is surrounded by land uses with lower density, the design emphasis must separate and protect the project and its environs. The alternate site plan offered by the applicant meets this standard. And I think that's important because we tried the first time around, but we took a very special and close look on remand at making sure that we had appropriate transitions with larger perimeter lots, appropriate buffers, given the lower density in the rural community preserve that is around this. That's what we looked at, that's what we were trying to accomplish, and that's what we have accomplished through this alternative site plan. So with that, unless you have any questions of me at this time, I'm going to let our planner, who's Jennifer Sapin, come up and walk you through some of the other details as related to this.
Any questions for the attorney? Thank you.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Jennifer Sapin, and I am an AICP certified land planner. I want to start right off with the sub-outlying suburban comprehensive plan, the future land use category that this property is within. As Richard said, this is the only property that has this future land use. What we heard from the residents was a concern that if this is approved, then won't another project be approved, and then the whole Buckingham would change. This property is unique. It's the only one that has this future land use category, and our requested density is within the allowable densities of this future land use category, and no industrial uses are proposed. Policy 5.1.5, Sharam brought this up, but again, we wanted to point out that the key here is uses. In the residential use proposed, residential use abutting, this policy is in place to protect uses from incompatible uses. One way you can look whether these two uses are compatible with one another is your land development code. Single family up against single family requires no landscape buffer whatsoever. Therefore, the land development code looks to inherent compatibilities between single family and single family. We took a look at some of the lots in the area. This graphic shows a radial expansion around the property of 1,500 feet. Looking at the 5 smallest lots in the area, you can see on the chart here on the left, the size of the lots are very similar to the smaller interior lots that we are proposed. The larger lots are on the right side of the table. And these lots aren't new. They've been on the tax roll since the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So while most of the lots in this area are larger, there are some that are smaller. And those lots exist currently today, and they're small size right next to larger single-family lots. Also, I want to point out in this graphic, to the east and the west of this property is not residential uses. There's the power lines, the substation on the east side, and on the west side is the mulching. And on the north and south side, with the exception of some lots on the north boundary, we actually abut roads. So there are residential beyond the roads, but very few residential lots we directly abut. This board did approve a very similar project in 2021 at Buckingham 345 RPD. In this project, there were smaller lots in the interior and set back away from the Buckingham Rural Preserve. The lots that are against the Buckingham Rural Preserve are larger. The lots that we have proposed are duplicate in size as what was approved in this project. So you can see here it's 80 by 170 and 13,600 square foot. So the approval of this project, we are mimicking that approach in how you transition from larger lots on the outside to smaller lots on the inside. I also want to note that the Buckingham 345 actually had smaller lots on the interior of the project than what we are proposing today. Looking at the master concept plan, there's no change to access, no change from what was proposed before or what is currently approved. Those access points are in the current zoning approval. There are no wetland impacts, and the pass-through conveyance is remaining now, but we're increasing the easement width to 60 feet wide. Currently, on the survey, the easement is 30 feet wide, and the ditch does not stay entirely within the easement, and the county, to maintain that ditch, is outside of that easement. The easement on the approved master concept plan was 40 feet wide. It actually didn't fit when you mathematically do it, and it didn't provide any access, maintenance access for the county. The proposed easement, on the other hand, expands this to 60 feet wide. It allows enough room for the conveyance ditch and an additional 20-foot easement on the side for a 10-foot path, so that the county can easily maintain that property and not be outside of the easement that they're allowed within. So similar to Buckingham 345, we are proposing larger lots around the exterior of the lot. I want to point out the perimeter lots in the middle column on this table, the lot width and depth and size, but also the rear setback, which is 70 feet around the perimeter, and then the side separation of 10. Our previous application, we had the side setbacks at 5, and we heard that that was a concern of yours, so we have doubled that. Building separation, that would be 20 feet instead of 10 feet. Oh, and we have also reduced the lot coverage to 40%. Previous approval had it 45%, so a very large lot, or large home could be on those large lots as currently approved. Looking at the buffers, we have them indicated here in orange and green. The orange is a 30-foot buffer, and the 45 is a green buffer. And then in the very southwest corner on Staley Road, we have expanded that preserve. That preserve is 100 feet wide, creating that preserve buffer along the whole southern end of Staley Road. The land development code would only require 59 trees. Again, single family to single family requires no buffer. But the roadway against a roadway, that would require a type D buffer. So the LDC would require 59 trees. We are proposing to plant 434 trees, so well above the land development code. The buffers proposed meet and exceed the most intense buffers that the land development code has, greater than if there was a commercial development right next to a single family lot. Comparing the approved plan to the proposed plan, the approved plan on the left, as Richard mentioned, the lot lines go all the way to the back of the lot. That means that the 30-foot buffer would be within that homeowner's lot, and the 30-foot buffer overlaps the 45-foot rear yard setback. So in this case, the home would be 45 feet from the project boundary, 45 feet from the road, 45 feet from the abutting residential lots. The proposed plan, we're looking at the orange buffer, the 30-foot buffer. The home will be moved back further to 100 foot from the perimeter. You get to there by adding the 30-foot buffer, which that will be outside of the lots. That's better for maintenance. The HOA can maintain that without going on the lot. Sometimes homeowners feel that they can trim those landscape buffers if they're within their lot. So this, when you add together with the rear setback, that creates 100 feet between the home and the property boundary. Now looking at the green buffer, the approved plan, the back of the homes and the back of the pool cages were right up against Orange River Boulevard, Staley Road, and Homestead Lane. And the corner lot at Staley and Homestead would be entirely a residential lot, with those homes closer to the perimeter of the project and more visible. The proposed plan, looking at the green buffer, a lot of the homes have been removed from the traveling public. The roadway on Orange River and Staley, you see we have proposed roadways against those roadways. That means that home would be 110 feet from the boundary. You have the buffer, you have the road itself, and then you have the front setback. We also believe the view of this, the front of homes where it's a little more undulated, you have the landscaping on the individual lots. The traveling public then, seeing the front of the homes on the other side of a road, will be a much better buffer than what the approved plan has. While we're not in the rural community preserve, you do have a policy that outlines transitions if you are on the edge of the rural community preserve. We have created that transition by larger lots, similar to Buckingham 345, exactly like Buckingham 345. and the very large, expansive buffers and setbacks and greater open space than what the approved plan does. And the buffers far exceed the land development code. Just real quick, I do want to point out that the project is within the service area for both water and sewer, and extensions of those lines will be provided by the developer. You have a couple of policies that encourage a mix of residential types on a county-wide basis. So each area of the county seeks to have a mix and a diverse mix of housing types, sizes, and products. This creates a diverse size and product in this region. So in summary, I bring up 5.1.5 again to point out that 5.1.5 is relevant to use, and in this case it is single-family use against a single-family use. The proposed plan provides more buffering, open space, and setbacks around the perimeter than the currently approved project. The proposed density is allowed by the project's future land use category, and this board has approved a very similar RPD with the same size lots and transitions. That concludes my portion of the, Richard has a summary, but if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions?
Thank you.
At this time.
Do you have anything, you have an engineer talk about traffic as far as entrances and lane improvements or anything?
We do not have our traffic consultant is oh, Ted's here? Yes, we do have someone here.
Okay, will they be going over that now, or?
Not presentation in chief, we did not plan on that, but we can answer those questions now.
Okay, so is there any traffic improvements done? And obviously, it's a dangerous road now with the impact fees come from this. What improvements are you looking at doing, the developers doing to put lanes, any extra lanes, turn lanes in and outs? Is there going to be a gated community or not?
Yes, it will be a gated community. Ted or Carl?
Just wondering if there's going to be lanes for traffic to stack up in before the gates and after the gates, and what kind of lane improvements are you doing to get into the community, out of the community? Oh, Ted's here, okay. I can
Yes,
see you back
Ted's
there.
here. I'll let Ted talk about the traffic in a
Ted will know. Okay, thank you, Ted.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ted Sharish, TR Transportation Consultants. The turn lanes we look at the development order stage. We don't typically look at that at the zoning stage. So because of zoning, we just look at the maximum number of development units. So at the DO, when we know exactly the number of units the project's going to entail, that's when the county makes us look at what exactly the turn lane improvements are going to be. And that's when the turn lane policy is looked at. So that's when we look at what turn lane improvements are going to be needed on Orange River and on Staley at the access drives. So that's when we'll look at what turn lane improvements are going to be needed. We'll have to analyze the intersection, the stop sign intersection as well as part of the DO traffic study. So we're going to be looking at this project again as part of the development order stage and what turn lane improvements are needed.
I know that's, I knew that part of it, but I know this will be something we're probably here today from the residents, and that's why I wanted to get it out there. But I know that wouldn't be done till later, but you would know the entrance as far as the setback, as far as where the buffer would be, where the setbacks would be, a guardhouse, how far from the road and everything, of stacking the vehicles, you know, area to, based upon that. I was just curious what they were planning on there. Besides the lane improvement, inside the community, it's already, that would be part of this process.
Yes. And the land development code does require an amount of stacking for any, if it is to be a gated community, that we have to have a certain amount of stacking from the road before the gates to accommodate that stacking before the gates are allowed. So to accommodate that distance into the community, so to ensure that there's no queuing that happens back out onto the county roadway. So.
This has been happening a lot lately with some of the newer communities. Obviously, the bus system and the school bus system is obviously really strained, and they don't have the time to go into each community fully through the community to pick up kids. So they're picking them up more or less on the road, on, for example, Corkscrew, instead of actually going into the communities. Are they plans looking like, as far as stacking up area there in the entrance to have a bus to be able to come into the community, at least to be able to turn around and get back out? Or they be expected to stop on Buckham Road?
Yeah, and during the development order process, we typically work with the school district in identifying where school bus stops may occur, either within or outside the community during that development order process.
We'll try to get them inside because
Yep.
it's a lot safer for the kids. Okay, thank you, Ted.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So again, Commissioners, for the record, Richard Aiken, and I did just want to clarify one of the one other thing about what Mr. Treese just said on some of the stacking issues in the entrances. As he indicated, at the time of development order, we have to meet the land development code requirements for stacking and things of that nature. We haven't asked for any deviations from any of that. So we will meet the strict requirements on the code of that for all of those things, and that will be evaluated at that time. So I want to just briefly again remind you of what the remand considerations were and how we addressed those. Policy 5.1.5 was the first issue that was sent back on remand for. That's been addressed by the hearing examiner. You've heard from Mr. Badamshian about policy 5.1.5, and you've also heard from Ms. Sapin about that. We are consistent with policy 5.1.5. We also addressed the lot sizes. As we've shown you, we've increased lot sizes. We've increased the perimeter lot sizes specifically to provide for a more gradual transition of density, which is consistent with what was done in the Buckingham 345 project. Lot dimensions, as I mentioned, we've also increased lot sizes, which led to an increase in the dimensions, as Ms. Sapin showed you. And with regard to the property development regulations, we also increased the setbacks. We increased both the side setbacks and the rear setbacks on remand directly to address the issues and concerns raised by the board at that time. To talk again briefly about policy 5.1.5, and just for clarity, this is not the entire policy, it's the introductory sentence, but it provides to protect existing residential uses from encroachment of uses that are potentially destructive to the character and integrity of the residential environment. As you've heard, in this case, the project is easily compatible because the uses are the same. The uses are all single-family residential uses. It's not commercial compared to single-family use or industrial. It's all single-family. The policy does not talk about anything other than uses. It doesn't talk about density or setbacks or lot sizes. In other words, it doesn't say to protect existing and future residential areas from any encroachment of smaller lots or of greater density or of different property development regulations. That's not what it says. But even though that's not what it says, we did try to address that on remand by providing for greater buffers and providing for greater setbacks in order to address the concerns. And to this end, I think it's important to go back and look at policy 20.1.6, which Ms. Sapin talked a little bit about. But policy 5.1.5 is the general residential, protecting residential uses. Policy 20.1.6 is a specific policy that specifically applies to properties that are adjacent to the rural community preserve, like the one that's before you here today. So it is the specific policy that we believe governs what we have to do and directs us as to how do we have to design this project in order to be compatible. And you've seen what it says, but it says when possible, residential development adjacent to the rural community preserve future land use category should make appropriate transitions to the community plan area with a graduated increase in density as development moves away from the rural community preserve future land use category boundary. Appropriate buffers will be established for projects adjacent to the rural community preserve future land use category boundary during the rezoning process. So what you've heard and what you've seen is that we've done that, all right? Number one, we've created transitions by looking at the perimeter lots and having larger perimeter lots, so you have larger lots with a graduated transition as you move inward. We've also specifically looked at the buffers, and we've increased the buffers. We have large buffers around the property, greater than any buffer that would be required by the Land Development Code in this scenario. And we looked at the Buckingham 345 project to see, okay, a project that is also adjacent to the Rural Community Preserve. What did the board want there? What did the board approve? And we tried to mimic that in order to try and be consistent with something that you had found consistent in the past. So in conclusion here, the applicant has addressed the items that the board requested us to address on remand. We've reduced the density. And that hasn't been talked about a lot here, but we did reduce density in order to increase the perimeter lot sizes. We've increased the setbacks on the lot lines and the setbacks, not only the side setbacks, but the rear setbacks as well. We provided for the transition away from the rural community preserve. The applicant in this case is not asking for a plan amendment here to increase density. Instead, we're staying within the density that's currently allowed by the comprehensive plan and the density that's been allowed in the future land use category on this property since the inception of the LEAP plan. As stated earlier, this project is not in the rural community preserve, and it never has been. The county made a decision from the inception of the LEAP plan and the creation of the rural community preserve not to place those restrictions on this property. The applicant's following the requirements that the county has established for this parcel. To require compliance with some other future land use, specifically rural community preserve, would not be consistent with the LEAP plan. Other projects have sought density increases. In fact, Buckingham 345 did through a comprehensive plan amendment, and this one does not. The applicant's not asking you to make a policy decision via a CPA to change the rules that apply to this parcel or to change the density. Instead, we're just asking the county to apply the requirements of the comprehensive plan that have existed on this property and continue to exist on this property. The applicant has demonstrated compliance with those requirements, the requirements of both the comp plan and the land development code. And not only have we shown you that we've complied with it, staff has agreed that we've complied with it now twice, and they're in agreement, and the hearing examiner has now agreed that we are in compliance with those requirements. But not only have we actually demonstrated compliance with those things, we've tried to go above and beyond with the additional buffers and the larger lots in order to address the concerns raised by not only the board, but the members of the public. Those concessions were made to assure compatibility. In conclusion, the competent substantial evidence supports approval of this request. I don't believe there's any competent substantial evidence to find that the request is not consistent with the comprehensive plan and the land development code. And we would ask for approval of this project. I would be happy to answer any other questions that you have. I do have our project engineer, Mr. Baracco, here. I've also got our project ecologist here if you'd like to ask him any questions. And as you know, Mr. Treese is also here. So,
Any questions? No questions. Thank you very much.
thank you, sir.
I have a list of 61 participants. They're broken up to categories. They've spoken at the original hearing, spoke at the remand, and then obviously spoke at both. I'm going to go in order. You have the opportunity to come up and speak for or against it. If you want to waive that and just say you're for or you oppose it, you can do that as well. The first person on my list is Cara Alfaro. Alfaro? Ken Carmichael will be following.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Cara Alfaro. I've lived in Buckingham for 25 years. I have a business on Buckingham Road for 21 years. The building that we operate our business out of is part of the Lee County Historic Trust, which basically no longer exists, but we received grant funds to restore the building. It's like an old cracker building that also exists at the Lee County Historic Museum here downtown. At that time, that was also the time of the Lee County Conservation 2020 program, when there was a lot of different programs in place through the county that were concerned with the more culture and integrity and quality of life, rather than just more gated communities. The presenters this morning have talked about single family against single family, and I think that refers to different zoning. But as far as I know, the zoning in our area in Buckingham is all agriculture. So with very limited commercial, the single family residential does not, as far as I know, is only on the perimeter. So we're not talking about single family against the typical what people call single family. The other concern that I have, and I guess I've heard that this isn't addressed until the development order, is not just the traffic, it's the utilities. All of us in Buckingham have wells and septic systems. So I don't think that that's going to fit on this development. So how are they going to get water in and water out? Or, what out? It would have to go through the Buckingham Preserve. And so to approve this increased density without addressing the traffic issues that we already have and how they're going to handle these utilities that all infringes on our property rights, because we're talking about property rights and what's allowed. So what happens on this property affects all of us here. So we hope that you take into consideration all of our property rights as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken Carmichael, followed by Pamela Caplow. Ken Carmichael. Pamela Caplow. Next up after Pamela is Bert Klein.
Good morning. My name is Pamela Chaplow. I've been a resident of Buckingham, specifically Homestead Lane, for about 13 years now. I feel like it's an honor and a privilege to live there. We moved there for a reason, and we've definitely seen the changes around us. I'm definitely opposed to the increase as being proposed today. I think that we have great acceptable examples of communities such as Remington Oaks and Horse Creek that has been responsibly built, that complements Buckingham. I feel like we're taking a step backwards. We go from just an approved industrial park to the preserve, from a mulch field to a slam-packed residential community like you would see outside of Buckingham, then back into the preserve again. It doesn't complement us. I think it's going to complicate it. One thing that, probably the biggest thing that concerns us, our subdivision that backs up, we are on the south side and to the east of this property, is the flooding. Just a couple weeks ago, we had a substantial amount of rain. Our road was almost underwater again. And I know that was just a miraculous, unseasonable rain that we had, but that's the reality of it. With that being said, I don't care how big and wide that ditch is. For 13 years, I've watched it, and we've flooded, and that ditch is only as good as the continued ditch system out to where it dumps out. And if somebody isn't properly maintaining that north of this property, then this is only going to complicate it. As far as, and I've asked this before of the developer, and I know that the lanes of entrance and exit, but I've asked before if they knew where the construction entrance was going to be. And furthermore, is there any other entrance, construction or access, off of Homestead Lane that would impact us? Homestead Lane is a one-way in, one-way out. It's a private road for us. We maintain it ourselves. And so this is going to have a dramatic impact on us. The reality of us having to try to move forward with making ours gated, because although we can't discuss traffic, vehicle traffic, I can tell you that foot traffic is already going to be a problem. We've seen an increase in dumpings on that road just because everything is getting pushed out towards us. This is certainly going to see an impact for us.
Ma'am, your comments your time's up.
Oh, okay.
Apologize.
Thank you.
Sure. Next person is Bert Klein, followed by Lisa Coffey.
Good morning. Thank
Good
you
morning.
for hearing from me. I'm against the increase from the 160 to 248. I am suspicious of the traffic for a couple of reasons. In past meetings, we've been told the impact on traffic was going to be negligible or no real impact. I would love to see the parameters that they used. When they took the traffic surveys, did they do it at peak hours, or did they take the number of cars over a 24-hour period and divide it? Those two results will be entirely different. And then this morning, I hear that, no, we haven't really done anything about looking at the different aspects that they mentioned. This morning, we'll do that once we get the development order, so that's a conflict with me. We've been told that this will have no impact on law enforcement, fire, schools, but in all of the meetings, I haven't seen any attestation from any of those organizations that, in fact, yeah, we're ready for that amount of increased people or fire or law enforcement service without any issue. I know the location is going to have its own utilities brought in other words, the water and all that, but from past meetings, they also said that they were going to put 10 additional wells in to water the grass. I believe, just from where I live, and my well, the water table is somewhat challenged from time to time, that I'd like you to consider the impact that those wells have as well. Next, I'd like you to look at it from a holistic picture. First of all, I understand from a legal standpoint, because of grandfathering or whatever, that this property is not part of the Buckingham Preserve area. However, in the real geographical world, it is within that, okay? So consider that, and also consider that we have a bunch of other building communities going on just outside the Buckingham Preserve things. All of these will, in fact, impact Buckingham. So I also think that with Buckingham 345 and the other things that they brought in lately, that it's a chipping away of what they originally were put down for what the amount of area that people have. And finally, I will say that from my own aspect, I grew up in a military family, 10 locations by the 8th grade. I then spent 26 years active duty Air Force. I continue to work for the Air Force as contractor and government civilian. So in May, I will have spent 50 consecutive years working for the Air Force. The reason I say that is I came to Buckingham with this being my last move. Everybody here came to Buckingham for a lifestyle, something they wanted. I'd ask you to honor that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Coffey? I'm not going to have any clapping whatsoever. You want to clap, leave the room.
Hi, my name is Lisa Coffey. I bought my house 25 years ago. We bought it because we love the community of Buckingham. It is all changing. I have my grandchildren. I take them to school every day, back and forth. And the traffic, I have to leave 2 hours early to get them to school on time. I pick my granddaughter up at 3:10, she gets out. It takes me to almost 6 o'clock to get from Orange River by Buckingham to Staley Road. I live at Staley Road Farms, and it takes me 3 hours almost to get home. You guys ain't out there seeing the traffic. It is terrible. We had an accident. My granddaughter was in an accident. She was paralyzed. When I got the call, there was an accident on the road. I couldn't even get to the hospital because it was shut down. Because my road is one way in and one way out. And you guys want to put this in, all these houses in there now? I oppose of it. I mean, we cannot have all this traffic now. It is terrible. And you guys just don't care about us. And that's all I have to say.
Next person, David Cortez. David? Not here. Susan Farrell? She's not here. Sarah Fisher? Followed by Michael Goals. Followed by Michael Goals. Good morning.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Fisher, and I'm a resident of Buckingham now for 30 years. Flooding possibilities have been an issue and a concern of many of the Buckingham residents, with the addition of another 58 homes to this proposed development. This is exactly the same concerns the residents off Bayshore had when the County Commission approved Bayshore Ranch development. The road construction associated with Bayshore Ranch development by Lennar caused major flooding in the surrounding areas in January when we had all the heavy rains. This flooding issue has adversely affected residents in that area, highlighting the need for careful planning and consideration of environmental factors during large-scale developments. The developer, Lennar, is now facing fines of $1,000 per day to restore the land and revert it back to grass, as this road was not part of the original plan. It is not only essential, but the responsibility of our elected county commissioners to balance progress with the environmental impact and the community well-being and safety to avoid such unintended consequences in the future of our rural community of Buckingham Preserve. The developer does have a right to request an increase in density in order to make this project more profitable, which is exactly all it's about. But unfortunately, they are the only ones who benefit from this increased density. It is the citizens of Buckingham Preserve who will be paying the price, and it's a big one, to the developer by experiencing a bigger impact to our environment, wildlife, roadways, safety, and quality of our life. I live directly across from where this is going to be, and they are also proposing the entrance directly across from ours. It's already dangerous making a left-hand turn with the traffic the way it is now. The increased density proposed by the developer, the Lee County Commission is not obligated to approve this amendment if the increased density is deemed incompatible with the Lee County plan and not adhered to, which it is not. So I request that you do not allow this additional density. We already have a big enough impact as it is with what's going on there now. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. What's your name again?
Sarah.
Cheryl Fisher.
Okay. Did I miss somebody that I mentioned Susan Farrow and she was going to come up? No? I did say Sarah Fisher.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Get them all. Chair, if I could, our county attorney has joined us again for, real quick. Michael, can you give us a little background? I'm trying to help everybody here. I know I brought traffic up earlier so we wouldn't have that discussion. So we're preempted by the state of Florida as of 2011 about traffic. We cannot deny things. I know we all have to drive in it. We all experience it every day throughout the county. Michael, can you tell us how this procedure works as far as traffic, what we can and cannot? We cannot deny something because of traffic because the state changes?
Yes, the previous regulations involved traffic concurrency was a system put in place to ensure that developments did not bring traffic into certain areas without having the roadway improvements already in place to serve that particular development. That regulation was deregulated, so to speak, by the state back in 2011, and the county no longer has the regulatory authority to deny a project simply because it increased traffic impacts on a roadway network. It's a little different than the discussion was having earlier when you asked about the traffic with how the site circulation was going to work and the development order standards that go along with site and how the traffic actually interacts with the community. It's a little different, but from a concurrency standpoint, denying an application simply because it creates traffic is not appropriate.
Okay, thank you. I just want everybody to hear that because we do hear you and we do feel for you, but we're limited what we can and cannot do. We cannot override the state's rules and deny something for traffic. So again, thank you, Michael. Sorry, Chair.
No, it's okay, no problem. Sarah, by all means, apologize for the
No, it's
delay.
fine. I thought it was my hearing. Good morning. My name is Sarah Fisher. I'm a fifth generation from Lee County. I believe Brian and I went to middle school together. My home is off of Glen Avenue, which is a side street off Homestead Lane, so directly impacted by this project. I just wanted to touch on the 1991 decision. I understand we can't go back in time and change that decision of it being a donut hole and being left out, but we can all acknowledge that it wasn't right. And as the commissioners and as people that we elect and that are our voice, you could make that right. You can make Buckingham a whole and not a whole project and not, have to go through Buckingham to get to this one piece of the donut. So I just say that you can correct the problem. The developers have proven multiple times with their plans that they do not intend on carrying out improvements of drainage. By them saying they're gonna leave it where it is and give you easement, they're putting it back on the commission, they're putting it back on the county, and the county has not given any indication that they're going to do something about it. And we only ask that we don't flood. But also, you know, the developers are using words like buffers and they're gonna give so many feet. We're not dumb, that's landscaping. That is just using the standard HOA, making it look very nice and appealing so they sell more homes, and it's how they block in their community. It's just a mass-produced HOA. Also, the road, I don't know if y'all know the area, but the corner of Staley and Tice that they're gonna leave as conservative land, that's a cypress head. Can't build on it anyways. They're not doing anything that they're not doing anything for the community to make it better. They can't. I believe that's a law. I'm not a lawyer, so don't quote me. Overall, they're putting the drainage back on you guys. I mean, do you have a plan? Also, the developers proved today they don't have a plan as far as entrances, as far as the children. There's a school within a mile. Children will be walking to school because there's not bus pickup for those two schools within 2 miles of a school. They haven't even thought about this community and what it will be impacting. Also, I will bring up again, I live off of Homestead Lane. Where's the construction entrance going to be? And is that entrance going to be an entrance after construction is done? What is, nobody knows because they won't say.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Michael Goals? Michael here? Porfirio Gutierrez? No? Michael Hanson? Michael here? Patricia Hepley? Followed by Claudia Keys, please. Will be next after her. Thank you.
My name is Patty Heafy, and I live in Buckingham. I've been there for almost 20 years. And I just want to say that I oppose this on all the levels that have been brought up. The flooding, we're all on wells. Please save my well. Thank you.
Thank you. Claudia? Followed by Carl Crop.
Hello, my name is Claudia Cleese. I live on a horse farm off of Orange River Boulevard, and I've lived there for over 20 years. I disagree with the increased density from the original plan. I urge you to drive down from Luckett Road to Orange River Boulevard during afternoon when school is out. This goes past the property in question. You will be in traffic that is bumper to bumper. Adding more vehicles will just make that drive worse than it already is. Furthermore, I don't think that the utilities would support the increase of density either. In Buckingham, we need to use wells and septic tanks. Due to the increase of development in the area, water levels are getting lower as well. So, once again, I disagree with the increase of density, and I would like you to reconsider that.
Thank you. Carl Crop, followed by Barbara Kudrow. Barbara's up next.
Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
I live right across the street from the development. I think it's their, total right to build this place, but I think they should stick with the 160 that you guys came up with back in 2005. I don't know what the difference is between now and then. Everybody talks about the roads. I know that's irrelevant for your consideration, but 160 is a good number. I don't know why it just keeps going up. And then when you guys had, I'm afraid I lost track, but I believe you approved them for a less number, 190 or whatever it was, and then they immediately filed the, let's try this again. So, I mean, how many times are they going to do this? Keep changing it and just tweaking it and tweaking it and tweaking it. I like the 160. I think that's a good number, you know. So, gentlemen, have a nice day.
Thank you very much. Barbara Kudrow? Is Barbara here? Followed by Brenda Lewis.
My name is Barbara Kudrow, and I live in River Grove Estates. I'm here to voice my concerns about the new development. My concerns are for the ecosystem, including the water runoff and the underground water that supply many of us that have wells. I'm also concerned about the wetlands in the surrounding areas. My concerns are that the existing draining system, including ditches and flood control systems, will be affected by the decrease of natural lands that absorb water, and more flooding will result. We live in this area because of the rural setting, the wildlife, the natural beauty, the trees, and open lands and waterways. Adding more housing to this area will have a negative impact on all of these factors and the reasons that we love and live here. Thank you.
Brenda Lewis? Brenda here? No. Okay. Jennifer Mollett? How about Philip Mollett? Philip Mollett? Thank you. And your wife Jennifer here?
I'm trying to. So my name is Philippe Maillard. I live on Stanley, and I present something for you a little bit. This is part of what was from the hearing examiner, and from your policy, from when you remanded. So you request to look at the chapter 5.15. As we see again this morning, the historic background of the Lee County. Now you can see here the commissioner, the hearing commissioner, back up and say yes, you accept everything, whatever they say, because of the Harris law. So I don't know why she can refer to this clause. We say you can go back until 2091, who was 2 DUA by acre. And of course, the approval of 160 will be great also too, as we don't try to remove the right of these people. We're just trying to keep Buckingham. Also, if you do the staff member requested 7.5, but we're still with 6.7 square foot. So if you're looking at it, is 0.17 acre. That is what it is for 0.7, and that is 0.15. That is what the hearing examiner approved it. But if you look at it in Cape Coral, it's 0.2. So this is very, very small lot. I see also the staff member originally asked for 200 dwelling, but we don't know why, how they calculate that. They did not say nothing, why. Now, if we look at their paper, you go to see the size of their lot, and you go to see they remove, or almost we lose for the second option, the last option, they remove 4.6 acre of the property. I don't know where that disappeared. So since the staff can do the calculation, I try to do the calculation myself. So I put the FPL right away, because you need to remove this acre, the wetland, the water management, the road, the amenity. So technically, you have only on there the ones they want right now, the 92.47 acre, not usable. So it leaves you only 36.32 acre. So if we do the first master plan, they don't want to do this one. But if you do the second master plan, the one they request right now, if you put on an acre, you get from R1 and R2, you get the staff. If you do the calculation, if you put 21 location at R2 and 241 at R1, you get more to what is possible. So it's mathematically not possible to put that many part of lot in this property.
Thank you for your comments.
And
Time's up. John Marcatino? Marcantonio? Gerald Martinez? Mr. Martinez? Kelly Mastorina? Kelly Mastorina? Gwen McCann? Dennis Markarat? Markarat? I probably pronounced that wrong. I apologize.
It's McEltrott. No one
Okay.
gets it right, so don't worry about it. My name's Dennis McEltrott. I'm a resident of Buckingham, and I'm opposed to the increased density. With all due respect to the experts, the attorneys in the county, we live in Buckingham. It's our home. The increase density would negatively affect all the residents of Buckingham. This isn't about easements, buffers, drainage, lot sizes, or turn lanes. This is really about money. The increased density means more money for the developer. The developer purchased the property understanding that it was for 160 lots. Let's leave it stand. As far as wells go, when the veranda went in, they dried up most of the wells on Orange River Loop and wound up having to drill everybody new wells. So it's something to be considered. Thank you.
Bill McElrath? Bill? How about Tom? Dixie McClune? Dixie McClune? Thomas Holman? Sorry.
Hi, I'm Tom McEltrott,
Okay, great.
and my wife and I, Eileen, live in Buckingham, have for 30 years. Eileen and I are opposed to any increase in density for this site. Again, like Dennis said, the issue is really not about, we discussed the easements and drainage and buffers and lot dimensions. The key issue is the increased density. Contrary to what the applicant's attorney said, we are looking at an increase in density from 160 to 248. If there was no proposed increase, I don't think any of us would be here this morning. The density was already increased in '05, and we must live with that. As the traffic consultant also echoed, we are looking at the density at this stage, not the traffic considerations or the lanes for buses and things like that. And the applicant is asking for an increase in density of 50%. That's pretty dramatic. I don't believe the residents of Lee County have a responsibility to ensure the increased profitability of land developers. They need to look at the residents' needs and requests. And I thank you for your time this morning.
Dixie McClune? Thomas Omerman? Thomas Omerman? Shane Parker? Shane Parker? Christy Patrick? Christy Patrick? Richard Paul? Richard Paul?
Morning, gentlemen. My name is Richard Paul. I too live in River Grove Estates, and I have a concern with the density. We moved there because we wanted space, wanted a little bit of land. We understood the 160, like the gentleman just before me had said. I understood it. Not quite an acre, but we can live with it. Went to 248. It's a 50% increase. I'm all about controlled growth. I own a business. I need customers. Control growth, manage growth is good. This is not good. Cecil, we've seen you at Buckingham Restaurant. Unfortunately, I've never seen Mike out. I live on the Orange River. Needless to say, during Hurricane Ian, we had some flood. Several houses in the neighborhood got some water. I was lucky, came right up to my pool deck. The drainage that they're going to drain, is it going to drain to us? Is it going to be maintained? Where is it going to go? This development is clearly inside the Buckingham Preserve. It's not next to, it's not adjacent to, it's inside. You can't talk traffic, but you sure need to talk about safety. Business that I own, safety shuts it down. If you're not safe, we don't do it. This is not safe. I oppose this, and I'd like to see you change your mind. Thank you.
Judy Picola? Judy here? Sandy Porteller? Sandy? Followed by Beverly Ritchie.
Good morning, I'm Sandy Portella. Several people have already made comments that I wanted to make, such as this is a 50% increase over the original amount. That is astounding. And simply put, this is an attempt to make lemonade out of lemons, to save a business decision that went sour. It was originally a sound business decision. 160 homes would generate enough profit for a developer. But given time, the bankruptcy of the original developer and the pandemic, it no longer is. The developer now says they need 248 homes to realize the profit they originally sought. However, during this period, the area has already grown while infrastructure has not. One of the concerns is traffic on Orange River Boulevard, and they are now planning a new project, Brighton Point, right near the Circle K. This will further complicate matters. Each time this rezoning request comes up, if even a small increase of number of homes is approved, as it has been shown, it serves as a stepping stone for further exploitation of the original plan. And in conclusion, as I said at the beginning, current owner has to accept that a collision of factors has resulted in what originally was a sound investment gone sour. Thank you.
Thank you. Beverly Ritchie? Beverly Ritchie? Gene Roth? Gene Roth. Michael Svoboda? Michael Svoboda? Corey Wilkes? Thank you. Debbie Dragan? Followed by Manny Flint.
Good morning. My name is Debbie Dargan, and I live in Buckingham. The density of the Buckingham Rural Community Preserve requires 1 acre minimum per lot. A concession was given to build 160 houses on 128 acres, which was already more dense than we have in Buckingham. The current landowner is asking for an increase in the density to 258 homes on the same acreage, which would make for very small interior lots, very small. Taking into consideration the roads, the lakes, common areas, setbacks, etc. This is not compatible with the Buckingham Rural Community Preserve way of life. There are many other areas to build on that do not have the same constraints nor way of life. We live here for a reason. This increase was also put a strain on our existing schools, police, fire, garbage disposal, drainage, and especially the water usage. For example, to keep the lakes hydrated. This can cause existing wells to run dry. We're on wells here. It will also cause safety to be more of an issue. We're constantly being passed while going the speed limit on Orange River Boulevard and Buckingham Road, where the perpetrators are crossing double yellow lines. We have been witnesses to near accidents because of this. The intersection at State Road 80 and Buckingham Road is both confusing and dangerous. More people on the same roads will cause a huge increase in safety issues. The current owners of this land do not live here and then do not have to deal with all the problems they are adding to. They purchased the land knowing it was limited to 160 houses. Their only concern seems to be making as much profit as they can, thus the request for more houses. More people equals more problems. Once they are done developing and selling, they are gone and don't have to deal with any of the repercussions. Our commissioners are elected in part to ensure our safety, to make sure our resources are being used correctly, and to maintain our community long term. Allowing increase in people will put a great strain on our existing resources, as well as contribute to existing safety issues. Any and all variances requested must be assessed as to the impact on the current community. We live here for the way of life. Buckingham should be no different, should be safe, and shouldn't be changed by outsiders. We don't want any precedents set, and we certainly do not want more people than are already allowed. Thank you.
Thank you. Manny Flint. Manny Flint? Patricia Cleese. Thomas McKilburns?
Hello, my name's Tom McKibbins. I'm a resident of Buckingham Preserve area, living in Orange River Oaks. I object to the rezoning proposal to increase Orange River OPD from 160 to 258 or 248, whatever the new number is, homes on 129 acres. Buckingham Rural Community Preserve area is in a preserve. The existing approved zoning lot density of 160 homes already exceeds Buckingham minimum lot size of 1 acre per lot. Any increase in density is a direct conflict with the Buckingham Rural Preserve area minimum standards. Approving this rezoning proposal gives permission and precedence for more of the same, thereby undermining the intent of the Buckingham Rural Preserve community area, making it no longer a preserve. Everyone here today, as residents of the preserve, are asking the commissioners to deny the rezoning proposal for now and in the future. Some interesting information I come along as I look at this is the Buckingham Preserve minimum lot size of 1 acre lot, okay? If you take a look at Horse Creek, the development there, I think one of the better examples of how that was done and how to create a great community with 1 acre minimum lots. And it's, I think, a great example. I wish everyone would use it. All lots are 1 acre, and they end up subtracting all the roads and entrance and ponds and all that kind of stuff. And the question I have, or the things I'm finding out, is as we look at the RPD that's being proposed here, is that the 1 acre limit isn't at all being, if you take a look at 6,700 square foot is what the minimum lot size is, that's almost 1/8 of an acre. And then the interior ones, or the exterior ones, a little bit bigger, you know, almost a 1/4 acre. Actually, not even a 1/4 acre. So it's almost a factor of 8 different than all the rest. So that's the things I wanted to point out. And again, I think we all are objecting and wish that you would cast your vote to disapprove the zoning request. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Murray?
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Robert Murray. I'm had two hats this morning. I'm president of the Buckingham Conservancy Association, plus I'm resident of Buckingham. So I'm here for two purposes. I've been a resident of Buckingham since 1991. I have a little horse farm out there. So it's been over 30 years. It's kind of surprising it's been that long. I'm a professional engineer in the state of Florida. I know some of you guys professionally that way. When the current zoning was in the infancy, we actually met with the developer at that time. They listened to us, the community, and the current zoning met what we talked about. They listened to us concerns. So it's really concerned that they're coming back and changing it for more density. So, you know, I do urge, I know you will, I really urge you to listen to the residents here. We love Buckingham. Now, technically, I want to talk to you about the stormwater out there. Staff has talked about it, the applicants talked about it, a lot of people have questioned here. Hurricane Irma and Ian, Saley Farms Road, can I give this to you guys or not?
You could hand it to. Thank you.
Saley Farms Road, which is a mile south of the project, private road, butts up to Luckett, was underwater during both events. And being an engineer, I pretty much walked the drainage areas from 2 miles south to all the way to the Orange River, so I know where the water goes. The concern about stormwater, there's about 2,000 acres that flows from the south through this project. And the original plan showed the diversion through the wetland, up adjacent to Staley, then back out again. A couple control structures and a major entrance crossing. And the alternative plan keeps it where it is with a wider easement and improvements. I think some people questioned that, but some improvements to that. Now, the current standard for design, and Carl knows this, is for development is a 25-year storm event maximum, then everything stacks up and goes. Hurricane Irma and Ian were far beyond that. And after those events, or prior to that event, a lot of developers were building berms around the developments, basically creating a bowl. And after Irma, they realized they needed a flood relief. So concerns about, you know, manipulating the outfall, whatever, need to consider probably a more extreme event for the major outfall. The part of the issue out here is most of the improvements from Luckett Road north are on private property and private easement or not an easement at all. And the county can access them or maintain them. That's probably the biggest problem.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you, sir.
Millard Felipe? Okay, thank you. No.
Nice try.
Gary Stillwell? Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Name is Gary Stillwell. Several things brought up here are appropriate to what I was going to speak about. The 4 issues that you guys remanded back to the hearing examiner. Lot sizes and setbacks. On all the MC master concept plans that I've seen, the applicant shows setbacks on the eastern boundary to be 200 feet plus. This particular picture that's up here on the screen right now, I'm not sure where those 250-foot buffers are or setbacks are, but there's no preserved homes that are being impacted on that side of the project. It's all Florida Power and Light. Essentially, it works as an industrial type operation. So there's no impacts to the preserve residents on that side of the property. With these large setbacks over there, I would think that the applicant would be able to take those large setbacks, reduce them down to like 40 feet or maybe even less, because you're bumping up against Florida Power Light stuff, and distribute the other setback lands back to the areas that abut the preserve parcels to be consistent with the preserve community plan of transition. I do agree that type F buffers should be mandatory and permanent. If those buffers are eventually going to be inside like the HOA boundaries or something like that, there needs to be something that makes sure that they can't chop all the trees down, because River Hall is doing that right now. They're cutting up their buffers. The drainage way, the option to reroute it around the outsides, in my opinion, is certainly not viable. It's a maintenance nightmare. Transferring either one of the central or the outside over to Lee County, it makes all Lee County taxpayers we're subsidizing that project for a single homeowner or landowner. As far as drainage is concerned, the Orange River inflow is limited to 700 or 70 cubic feet per minute per second per square mile by the Lee County Master Drainage Plan. Improving that drainage flow in there might change the flooding, but it's going to, with all the increased 40% roofs, it's going to increase the flow beyond the limits that the Orange River can accept.
Thank you for your comments. Edwin Yarden? Edwin Yarden? Don Blackburn? Don Blackburn?
Yes, I'm Edwin Yurden. I just don't like the idea, you know, they're taking away with the percolation of the ground with all the pavements and the concrete and everything, and they did it at Delterra Woods where they built, you know, a berm or something around the thing, and it pushed all the water off onto other people, and it flooded a lot of places up in Bayshore and North Myers, and I don't know if this is going to, you know, still be a natural like sheet flow, or if it's going to stop all the natural flow of water. And they're putting in the 7 lakes, and you know, they're going to compensate us when we have to put new wells in, and you know, they're pumping water out to keep the lakes full and irrigation and stuff. And that's pretty much the only thing I have to say about it.
Right. Thank you. Don Blackburn.
Don, did you move back to Buckingham or from South Point? Or are you still in South Point?
I'm sorry, sir?
You still in South Point? Didn't you live on South Point?
Off Cypress Lake.
Cypress Lake. You still down there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Welcome back. Thanks for your service to Lee County.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. My name's Don Blackburn. 33 years ago, in the late 80s and early 90s, I lived in Buckingham and was involved in the creation of the preserve. I'm probably going to be a little repetitive of what other people have said, but while the 345 is adjacent, I mean, it's pretty obviously it's adjacent, this project is not. This project is surrounded by the preserve. Back when we started this 33 years ago, John States, and you all may remember John, a fine man, he didn't want to be part of the preserve, so the negotiation was that he would like to have a max of 2 units per acre. And so that's how that came about. Of course, to the people that live in Buckingham, the residents, we're thinking 2 units per acre is a half-acre lot, where in the Buckingham plan is a 1 acre. We never envisioned something like this was going to, you know, eventually surface. So, but that's how this all came about. But The point is that it is within the preserve, and we just felt like the only entitlement they were given, that John was given, was the up to 2 units per acre. So that's how that came about. So what I want to do also is I want to read part of the definition of sub-outlying suburban, and it's from policy 1.1.11. And what this says is, this is just an excerpt from it. This future land use category will be placed in areas where higher densities would be incompatible, or where there is a desire to retain a low-density community character. And the key right there is the community character, low density. So the residents of Buckingham feel like low density is, at a minimum, the 1 unit per acre. Now, if you've all been to Buckingham, you know that there's many lots out there, parcels that are much bigger. And that's what we would consider low density. And that's the character of Buckingham, is it's a low density area. And when you go back to this, the definition of the outlying suburban, it talks about the community character. So we think that there could be more work done to this plan, especially on the perimeter lots. Well, the 345 to 13,600, and they are adjacent. This property is within, and we'd like to see maybe an increase in the size of those perimeter lots. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Betsy Berdetti? Betsy? Followed by Bill Berdetti. Burdette, sorry.
Hi, my name is Betsy Burdette. I've been a resident of Buckingham now for 40 years. Just because the applicant has the right to request an increase in the density, the Board of County Commissioners is not obligated to approve the increase if the proposed development intensity is deemed incompatible and does not adhere to the LEED plan. We have conducted numerous public meetings in the community to discuss this proposed development, and there has been zero acceptance. The contrast and conflicts with the surrounding rural lifestyle are extensive, and the increased density threatens the essence of Buckingham as a rural community preserve. We request that you deem the proposed residential development amendment incompatible with the community and inconsistent with the LEED plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Burdette? Followed by Keith Campbell. Keith Campbell will be up next.
Good morning, gentlemen. I'm Bill Burdette. I'm Vice President of the Buckingham Community Association. And in 2007, I served as President of the Buckingham Community Planning Council, which was a partnership with Lee County to amend the Buckingham Community Plan. The zoning proposal that's being considered here today is incompatible with the community's vision and the policies that the Board of Commissioners adopted in that plan. To be clear, the property does not have the Rural Community Preserve land use designation, but this property is within the Buckingham Community Plan and is subject to those policies. Which includes Goal 20, which says we are to manage the future growth in the Buckingham Community Plan area by preserving the existing rural and agricultural land use pattern, enhance the historic and rural character, and protect the unique historical and environmental resources. This proposal fails in all counts, and it's not just my opinion. At the hearing a year ago, you said this project doesn't belong in Buckingham. Well, today we're looking at a 3.8% reduction in density. That doesn't change that inconsistency. There's also a point that was made in the presentation earlier, that the fact that this project is single-family homes is therefore consistent because Buckingham is single-family homes. But that's not what the LEAP plan says. The LEAP plan says in Objective 20 that land uses in the community plan will be developed in a manner that is consistent with the rural and agricultural land use pattern. It doesn't say single-family homes. So this is not consistent with rural and agricultural land use patterns. The requested density is based on gross acreage. If you look at the clustering requirements in policy 2.1.5, if you apply clustering, you have to use only the upland acreage. So I see that as inconsistent as well. Again, I want to thank you for your time and letting us participate again in this, but when we came up with these policies for the Buckingham Community Plan, this is not what we had in mind. This is what we meant to stop. And I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Keith Campbell. Keith? Followed by Jeff Gray.
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Keith Campbell. I'm a resident of Buckingham, formerly a city boy. So when I came out to Buckingham, it was because I wanted my land, I wanted my peace, and I like the view that I have to come home every day. People like Bob, Bill, Betty, Nancy, they've been fighting this for over 30 years to keep the preserve the way it needs to be. We're not against them coming in and developing, but we're trying to keep the rural community to look like a rural community. We were okay with 160 homes. In the last meeting, Mr. Pendergrass, Mr. Greenwell asked them would they reduce their number. They literally sat here in this room and told you guys no. They must have thought about it for a little bit when you sent it back to the planning board. They reduced it by 10. Is that fair? No. The people here have been fighting for 30 years. They approved 160 with you guys. They want to preserve their land. That's what you guys need to be doing, preserving the land for the people that you serve, the people that vote you guys in. That's all we're asking for. We're not looking to fight with our neighbors. Just keep it looking like what we have out there. It's a rural community for a reason. If we want to live in Miami, we wouldn't be here fighting you today. You know, Cape Coral, I moved to Cape Coral to bring my family into a residence that I was used to back north. Now my family's gotten older. We want our peace. We want to be able to enjoy the countryside. That's what we have out there. We don't need, like I said, we don't need Miami right in the heart of a rural community. We were okay with your 200 that was offered. 248 homes is way too much. Safety-wise, a couple of weeks ago, I was out on Buckingham Road. A man got run over by a car on his motorcycle, on his bike. We called law enforcement. Law enforcement never showed up. It took the rescue over 35 minutes to get there. I was in the process of putting the man in my own car and taking him to the hospital while my wife, who was blocking the road, with a Henry County cop who was coming home to Buckingham, stopped to help us out. Lee County Sheriff's never made it there. Why? They had other calls that were a little bit more important, but like they said, they couldn't even get there because how far the road was backed up on Palm Beach Boulevard. So they may not be here telling you that they can handle it or not handle it, but us that live there, we see this time and time again. They cannot handle it. I talk to the fire department many of times because of what I do for a living. They know the 248 more homes in that community, they're not going to be able to handle it. So please consider what we're asking for. You don't have to give them the 248. We're okay with 190, but also try to keep as close to what we have in Buckingham. And thank you, guys.
Thank you. Jeff Gray? Jeff Gray? Lauren Hunt? Lauren Hunt. David Hutto? David Hutto?
Somebody come in.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
David Ted Hutto. Gentlemen, we're back here again and again and again because we don't feel like that you can put enough buffer zones in here to make this transition into the rural Buckingham Preserve. Just like Mr. Pendergrass said at the last meeting, that development does not belong here. It was approved for the 160 homes, and we would have went along with that. But he tried to get them to compromise. At the end of the last meeting, they had no intention of compromising with anybody. I'm sorry we don't have a team of engineers and lawyers to represent us. All we have is all these people out here who are residents who go to work every day, and all the names that you're calling are people that spoke before but could not make it today. They got jobs, they got families to take care of. And I just hope that y'all will give this a long, hard thought about what's right for us and what's right for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up, ma'am.
Good morning, Commissioners. I have been to every single one of these meetings for almost 2 years now, coming to speak because if you miss one meeting, you lose your opportunity to speak at the next meeting before you guys. So even though I'm extremely pregnant and not feeling the greatest today, I'm still here because I wanted to make sure we had the opportunity to voice our opposition of this development, trying to max out the maximum amount of homes to be built on this land. As it's been stated, the development at its fullest potential does not adhere to the Buckingham Preserve lifestyle, nor is it cohesive to our way of life in the community. This parcel of land is completely surrounded by the Buckingham Preserve, and while this parcel has exemption to that, and we understand, it is the duty of this panel to take a look at everything as a whole and make sure that the community is being taken care of. And so today I hope that you commissioners side with the community who did vote you into office rather than deciding to give the power to the developer. And I really hope you decide to make an impartial look at the facts and see that over these many, many months of meetings, or even years, I guess many months since we were last before you commissioners, the developer really hasn't done much work to change what it was that you had asked them to do before in regards to setbacks and different things. One thing I would really like you gentlemen to consider is public safety. And I know it's been stated many times that traffic is not within the realm of what you guys have the ability to choose over. But public safety is in fact within your realm. And so when looking at the safety of the Buckingham rural community, it is not in the best interest of the community to max out this development. Adding that many additional cars and people to the area that's already overwhelmed is not a smart safety decision. I do live at the corner of Orange River and Staley on the north side, and it's a nightmare. So while you may not have jurisdiction over the traffic patterns, we do ask that you consider and take into effect the safety that this community being maxed out could handle. Now, another note, something that personally concerns me is the water flowways. Those massive rainfalls we had about 2 weeks ago, we were completely flooded, just all over the area. And my property, I have the drainage canal, if you will. We call it a creek, but it runs along this property ultimately north to the Orange River, and that runs along our property. It had over a 3-foot increase in volume from what it normally does due to those massive rainfalls. And this development has the potential to be a completely devastating impact to the surrounding neighbors when drainage is concerned. And I know despite this team assuring us that drainage isn't going to be a problem, I think we've seen that when large communities are built all across Southwest Florida, that drainage does in fact play a role and unfortunately can be negatively impacted. So in closing, I would just ask again, commissioners, that you guys please look at the facts today through the eyes of us, the community, and that we ask that you could please do the right thing. Thank you.
Nancy Hutto?
Lauren Hunt.
Thank you. Nancy Hutto? 7 minutes.
Good morning. I'm Nancy Hutto. I've lived in Buckingham for 42 years. I don't really think how this property should be compared to 345. This property is completely surrounded, where 345 is one-sided. This property here was allotted for 160 homes back then, and I think it should stay that. And just because the applicant has the right to request the increase in the density for the future land use of the property does not mean that the Board of Commissioners should approve this. I hope y'all will take all this in consideration and vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Don Lewis? Terry Lodge? Next, after Terry will be Lauren McIntyre.
Good morning.
Morning.
The first time I had a chance to stand up here, I mentioned that I had voted for everybody, and it was my first time seeing everybody up there, and I was so happy about that. And I realized that the reason that I had voted initially was that you understood the rural life that we live in Buckingham. But even more than that, I think each and every one of you have the right moral character to know what's right and what's not. And I would do the same vote again if I'm asked to do so. At that same meeting, Brian, you pointed out about the roads and what we could and could not do. Well, I'm a redneck from Buckingham, and I'm also a Marine Corps brat, and so I just could not accept that that was the end of that. So I went ahead and pulled up every lawsuit, every county commissioner's attorney that questioned anything to do relating to the transportation concurrency provisions after HB 7207 was passed in 2011 by our Governor Rick Scott. And, you know, contrary to what I was thinking was appropriate at the time, that bill was great back then to get things stirred up after our global breakdown, but it wouldn't be appropriate now, with the exception that when you really get into this bill does put all of the onus on our local officials to get to make the final decision. They have established some minimums that developers must pay for concurrency of not only transportation, utilities, schools, and the other things when they're asking for rezoning or for an extra density. Obviously, the developer has explained to us that they were going to give the county so much for doing and getting this rezoning. Well, I'm pretty sure that this is not their first rodeo, and probably what they're referring to is the minimum concurrency that is required by the state in order to file and require this. Even if in your decisions you were to choose to do something with a developer, you have the right to increase that. That is purely a minimum, the state says in this bill, so that you know your county better than anyone else knows your county. I was really happy to see that, because I was thinking, how in the world am I going to get this out of Tallahassee, you know, or how are we going to get this abolished or rewritten? You've heard everything that I could possibly say and much better by many of the speakers. So I'm really saying at this site, it's not big enough for the developer to do what they want to do with this, not in the location where it is. And I just hope that you all will not only take this into consideration, but you'll have some compassion for us, because ultimately this will be your decision on what passes and what doesn't, or what increases you ask for from the developers or you don't.
Thank you for your comments.
You're very welcome, and thank you again for your service.
Lauren McIntyre.
Good morning. My name is Lauren McIntyre. Not only have I been a Buckingham resident since 2017, but I am a top producing realtor serving the people of Southwest Florida, and this is my third time speaking in front of you. I may not be allowed to do this, but I know that there are at least 2 other realtors in the room, so if anybody else is a licensed real estate agent, raise your hand. There you go. All right. And so many of us here to go against this. So we are speaking against this rezoning attempt, and why would I and my other colleagues here take over 15 plus hours of time away from our business just being here, not any additional meetings or research and things that we're doing outside of that, when those activities put money in our pockets? Because this is destroying our home. Buckingham is the only home my 5-year-old knows, and I'd like to keep it that way. Unfortunately, your decisions and your actions to continue to approve the massive amounts of development and density increases in and around Buckingham, coupled with your utter failure in addressing the infrastructure and safety concerns, has destroyed our quiet country way of life, as well as our beautiful and significant flora and fauna. We have repeatedly complimented the applicant's alternative plan for their extra buffers and transition. It looks very pretty. It looks beautiful. But that's not what we're here about. As you've heard before, we're here about money. And this does, as you've also heard, does not comply with the Lee Plan. The entire property may be 129 acres, but once you remove the land for the lakes and setbacks, shared space, roads, and sidewalks, you're left with not very much. If you look on page 6 of Philip Mallard's presentation, you'll see that that's roughly about 6.8 dwelling units per acre if his calculations are correct. Let's be generous and say they have 100 acres to develop. That's still more than the 2 dwelling units per acre laid out in the Lee Plan. It's so simple. Just take the space left available for home sites, whatever that acreage is, and divide it by 160. I am stunned that we are still here talking about this. Across these hearings, you have heard blatant lies and skewed data from the applicant, and you've heard your constituents please and supporting evidence. Your responsibility lies with your constituents. The people of Buckingham and Lee County, we are disappointed in everything that is happening all over this county, and I can assure you that if you are sitting in these seats after election, it will be because you sided with us, people of Buckingham and Lee County, or you didn't have an opponent. If I can say no to the dollar, then the county can too. People over profit, community over coin. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Kathleen Paget? Kathleen?
Good morning. My name is Kathleen Paget, and I moved to the Buckingham Rural Community Preserve back in September of '95 after looking at 33 homes all over Fort Myers in 3 days' time. And obviously, I moved there for the quality of life after having lived in New York City and Pembroke Pines. I knew that was where I wanted to live. And now I feel like my quality of life is changing. I live in the development, as some of these others here, River Grove Estates, across the street from exactly where their entrance is going to be, which I see as a huge safety issue. As in, I know just last week, I tried to make a right-hand turn out of my development at 7:30 in the morning. I waited 41 cars before I could make a right-hand turn. Now imagine what I'm going to have to deal with 248 homes. Those people who are going to have to be leaving work at that same time is totally, safety is unbelievable. And then it would be nice to keep this property undeveloped, but if it has to be developed, it had been approved for the 160. It would be nice to see, like River Grove Estates, we have homes that are on like 1 to 5 acres. It would be nice to see something like that, or Remington Oak, which is also in the area, or Horse Creek. I'm worried about emergency services being able to get to me or my family if it's needed. Anyone that comes to our area who hasn't ever been there before, they just can't believe the area. They're like, I never knew this existed. It's like, so can we just please keep some areas of Fort Myers like this? I mean, Fort Myers is growing exponentially. If we could just please keep it and have it similar to the surrounding areas, that would be great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I have to excuse myself. I have a medical appointment.
Yep. My name is Steve Pendergrass. I'll be acting chairman for the rest of the hearing today, so thank you. Next speaker will be Beverly Reed. Beverly Reed. And after Beverly Reed, we will have Julie Ward.
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Beverly Reed. I am probably one of the newer residents to Buckingham. We've been there a little over a year, and I have to say we've seen the changes. I'm not going to say much more. It's not that different from what you've heard from others. I would ask for a common sense approach to growth for Lee County. I mean, Florida itself is growing by leaps and bounds, as is Lee County. And we've talked about the quality of life, the impact that that growth has, not only on the current residents, but what about the new people who are moving here? So that's it. Oh, resources. We're in season now. Have you tried getting an appointment with a physical therapist recently? And these are people who are just here for a few months. So what's going to happen to our resources, our doctors, our nurses, our firefighters, police, teachers? We're already short on teachers. So increases in the county alone have a negative impact on those resources. This area, you have a chance to make a difference, and that's what we're asking for. You've heard about safety. That's a major, major issue. One question that was just posed to me back there, and I don't know if anyone has investigated whether or not this land has any kind of historical Indian value. So that's a question perhaps to be investigated. And I would also encourage the Lee Plan be enforced. Gentlemen, the ball is in your court. We ask you to hear the residents and turn down the developer's request. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Julie Ward. And after Julie, we have John Wilkes, Sr.
Good morning, I'm Julie Ward. I moved to Buckingham in 2019. I bought 5.4 acres on Jackson Road. I grew up in Minnesota. I'm not a local Floridian. I am now, proud to say. But I grew up in Minnesota on acreage and in a great neighborhood, 5-10 acre lots with horses, chickens, all that. And I always dreamed of having that again. When I moved to Florida, I moved over by Health Park. That was my place of employment at the time. I worked for the Lee Health Systems as a nurse. I see the taxing on the hospitals. I work in an area called ED Hold, where they hold patients until they get a room upstairs, and I can tell you that those people are holding for 24 to 72 hours at a time, and these are little people on stretchers and such things. Anyway, let's go to the logistics of the development. Buckingham 345 RPD should not be included as an example, as it is outside of the preserve. Also, it was brought up there is a wide variety of housing provided throughout the county, which is great. I'm thankful for that. But I don't foresee a development such as this, like an apartment complex, being allowed on Sanibel. On Captiva, they have a rule as to how many stories a building is allowed. So that's part of what they call the Lee Plan, I believe, which, sorry, I haven't researched too much, but there are rules for types of housing throughout the county to assure that the proposed type of housing is acceptable to the surrounding area. This development is not compatible with the surrounding area, the impact to the schools. Somebody brought up that children would have to walk to school from this development, and the impact that these unsuspecting people would have buying houses here, I feel bad for them too. Let's see, what else? Why not have a Class C type of development, such as Horse Creek, something environmentally friendly, no chemicals? I know the impact of all these developments have a impact as far as their fertilizers and the runoff into our creeks, the algae blooms, the impacts on manatees. And I'm out of time, I think. Yep. I appreciate you listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is John Wilkes Sr. After John, be Senator Wilkes.
Good morning. My name is John W. Wilkes Sr. I've lived in Buckingham where I've been for 47 years. I'm here to fight for what we have in our preserve. The preserve was started in 1989 as Goal 17 and was moved to Goal 20 of the Lee County Plan. We were here 1 year ago when the rezone request where you, the commissioners, sent it back to the hearing examiner for 3 things. Number 1, lot sizes and dimensions. County staff has ignored 20.1.6 of Goal 20. This policy states, when possible, residential development adjacent to the rural community preserve future land use category should make appropriate transitions to the community plan area with graduated increase in density as development moves away from the rural community preserve future land use boundary. Appropriate buffers will be established for projects adjacent to the rural community preserve future land use category boundary. Please note, this policy specifically requires 2 distinct actions. Number 1, that a gradual increase in density occurs as you move away from the rural community preserve future land use boundary. And 2, it doesn't say and or, it says 2, that appropriate buffers will be established. Staff is mixing 2 actions stating that 1-acre lots along the perimeter are not required with a gradual increase in density occurring as you move inward of the development as appropriate buffering is being provided. It is clearly possible for the applicant to provide 1-acre lots around the perimeter and increase the density moving forward and still provide the required buffering. We implore you to enforce this policy, 20.1.6 of the Lee Plan. 2, 5.1.5, this development does not meet the rural, agricultural, and historical character of the rural preserve. It is completely not compatible with our way of life out there. Exhibit 3, Exhibit B, Section 2B, which covers side setbacks. This has not been addressed properly. You shouldn't be able to spit from one window into another one of your neighbors. Let me bring your attention to Oakview on Buckingham Road, outside the preserve. It is a great example. You see the back door of 98% of these homes. Bad view for anyone riding by on Buckingham Road.
John, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Sandra. You got to follow him now.
Pardon?
So you get to follow him now.
Yeah, he stole all my material. I'm Sandra Wilkes, and of course I live in Buckingham. After reviewing the revised master concept plan from our HEX examiner with new recommendations for rezoning the subject property, I am still seeing 5-foot setbacks, and I don't take lightly to backyards of some dwellings draining into the wetlands that they border. The Lee County Comprehensive Plan, which is the law for land development in this county, contains our Buckingham Community Plan, Goal 20, which states to manage the future growth in the Buckingham Community Plan area, to preserve the existing rural and agricultural land use pattern, to diversify the choice of housing for Lee County by maintaining and enhancing the historic and rural character, and to protect the unique historical and environmental resources in the Buckingham Community Plan. 20.1.6, I too believe county staff has misinterpreted the transition and buffering requirements for development. It is clearly possible to provide 1-acre lots around the perimeter of this development and increase the density moving inward, and still provide the required buffering. This law must be enforced in policy 20.1.6. I would like to respectfully request that you deem this residential plan development amendment as incompatible. I would also like to invite you all out to Buckingham, where we will treat you so many ways, you'll have to like one of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that was the last speaker that spoke at the remand hearing and the original hearing, and I will come back to the applicant if they wish to address the board. Was your name on the list, ma'am? Yes, it was. What was your name? Were you called? I'm sorry? I did not realize I was going to be allowed to speak today. What was your name? Nicole.
It's on the list.
Judy? Yes, yes, you are here. Would you like to speak? Okay. Anybody else that name was on the list that did not get called from earlier? Okay. Thank you, Judy.
Hi there. I'm Judy Piccola. I live in Buckingham, obviously. My biggest concern is that the people who purchased this property purchased it to be able to put a certain number of homes on it. We don't need any more than 160 more homes putting traffic and children on the property. There's already difficult access if you have to use Orange River Boulevard, which I do, and getting out on Orange River Boulevard is sometimes a real tragic experience. My property accesses Buckingham Road at Orange River Boulevard, and there are times when I haven't been able to see the end of the cars lined up to try to make a turn at that intersection. I really think that the people who purchased this property should stick to what they bought and do their 160 homes, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else was not on the list that was not called earlier? David Cortez? Yes, you're on the list. Come on up.
My name is David Cortez. Like everyone here, I oppose to all these houses. We all understand it's 160. We're okay with that. Basically it. Everything they said, everything I was gonna say. And I really hope you guys side with us as we elected you guys into office, and we appreciate it if you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers at this time that was not called earlier? Okay, would the applicant like to address the board now? We've closed public comment.
Yes, thank you. Again, for the record, Richard Aiken. So I want to just try to go through and address a few of the things that were raised by the members of the public here. So first of all, there was discussion about the utilities and wells and septic that came up a couple of times. So I want to remind the board that there's an existing residential plan development that's approved. One of the existing conditions for that RPD is that utilities be extended to the site. That's not new. That's not something we're trying to add. So we would have to extend utilities to the site. That's an existing approval, an existing requirement of that approval. When it comes to the suggestion about irrigation on the site or wells that would have to be done, the actual alternate site plan that we are proposing for you has the exact same amount of area as far as that would have to be irrigated as the existing approval. So there wouldn't be any new burden on that created by the approval that we're requesting here from you today. There was a couple of comments about strain and availability for fire, for the sheriff, and for the school board. We did obtain and do have in the record copies of letters of availability from the fire department, from the sheriff's department, and from the school board for this project. That's a requirement for all rezonings. We did obtain those and do have copies of those, so I just wanted to point that out. I would like to ask Ms. Sapin to come up and just address a couple of the planning concerns, a couple of the policies that were raised by a couple members of the public briefly, and then I'll have another brief statement, and that'll be that.
Will she cover water management also as far as the flow and the runoff, or do you have something else for that?
So I can have Mr. Baracco talk about that. I know
Okay.
that there were a number of questions there. Carl, why don't you come up first and handle that, and then we'll have Jen.
Let me get the right master concept.
I believe somebody brought up the second gate usage, and I think that should point out that in Lee County now, any community this size has required by county code to require to have 2 gate entrances, exits, so that's required already, so.
Okay, go ahead.
Good morning. For the record, Carl Baracco with Baracco Associates, professional engineer. A few thoughts with drainage. The system that will be designed for the master concept plan that you're considering today would be very similar to the system that would serve the master concept plan that is already in place. So there would be really no change, or very little change, in the drainage that would serve this system. Beyond that, speaking about drainage to the south, the current master concept plan does address drainage to the south in a very limited way. The master concept plan you're considering today provides opportunity for more significant drainage improvements for that land to the south. Further, at the last hearing, we discussed a report that Lee County did to improve drainage in the entire area, including the area to the south. The master concept plan provided and offered today provides more opportunity to implement some of those drainage improvements that are outlined in your report. So overall, in my opinion, the master concept plan considered today is much more significant in terms of drainage improvements for land to the south. Thank you.
Any questions for staff or the applicant at all from the board at this point? Okay, come on up, please.
Hello again, Jennifer Sapin for the record. That's not the right one either. I pulled up the master concept plan here. I did want to show one that was up here earlier was an older version of the master concept plan. You'll notice, you know how this is the new version because it does have preserve down in the bottom corner at Homestead and Staley. And up in the northwest corner where there was a little bit of a concern that building wouldn't meet that 100-foot setback. You can see there's a little more separation there. So we did notice that and have added that extra room. So regarding access, Lee County has a requirement that all projects have 2 access points, anything over 5 acres. That's in case some kind of an emergency happens at one of the access points, that the other one is available. So the 2 access points that we have here are what were previously approved, and they align with a road on the north side on Orange River, and then with a driveway that is there on Staley. We did talk to the property owner while the speakers were discussing things. We heard the concerns about construction access. We think the most appropriate access for construction would be on Staley. Due to the fact there's a mulching facility that's along that entire boundary. So we think that's the most appropriate place for construction access. And we would be willing to agree to that in this forum to keep it off of where the lady had the concern on Homestead Lane, where the construction access possibly there. Another question came up about the wetlands and how density is calculated. So if you preserve wetlands in an effort to incentivize developers to preserve wetlands, if you preserve them, the same density that is on the surrounding uplands can be transferred. So in this case, the preserved wetlands has the same 2 units per acre that the rest of the property has in order to incentivize developers, again, to save the wetlands. And I want to point out, you can see on the master concept plan, there's 2 different hatch patterns. The little stipple hatch pattern, that's where the wetland is, and the cross hatch, those are the uplands. So those could be supplemented, the uplands, with upland vegetation. So that corner there, that is not quite where the wetland is. So there has been discussion on goal 20. And again, this is a goal, not a policy or an objective. Policies and objectives are what the state says that is how you review a development order, from policies, objectives, and standards. That goals are general statements, and in this case, the general statement is to manage the future growth of the Buckingham Community Plan. So that is different than the Rural Community Preserve. The Buckingham Community Plan is much larger. It's 2,500 acres larger than the Rural Community Preserve. And then once you move past Goal 20, you get into the policies, objectives, and standards, measurable policies that you can review your development orders by. Once we move into those policies and objectives, that's when the conversation changes from not the planning community, but to the Rural Community Preserve. That's where you come up, you start to have criteria for a minimum lot size of 1 acre. That's for that future land use category. And it is kind of confusing that it's community and a future land use, but they are very separate things. There was a question about single family, ag, single family zoning. We're looking at a use. So while there are zonings, within ag, you have a few different uses you can do. Single family is one of those uses. So that is what we are talking about here. It's not in the zoning instance, it is the use against use. And then the other thing I do want to point out before I leave, that this is not an agricultural zoned property today. We're not moving from an ag use to a residential use. It is currently a residential use. So that previous approval deemed that use compatible, single family to single family. So we're discussing the details of inside of the project and not whether or not a single family use is appropriate in this location, because that decision has already been made. You have any more questions? I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions for the commission, for staff?
Not for the applicant, right?
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll come back to the board for discussion or any questions. Applicant have anything else?
No, thank you, Commissioner. I think we've been through it. I would just, again, ask for approval, and for the approval with the change to the condition 6 that Mr. Adamchian mentioned earlier. Again, if you have any questions, happy to answer them.
Thank you. Okay, we'll come back to the board for any discussion.
Well, Mr. Chairman, can I guess I'll ask some questions to our attorney for curiosity and understanding. And maybe I could ask it to our hearing examiner too, because she's here as well. I don't know it's neat to have the hearing examiner here. It was a new policy that we created, but like, what questions are we allowed to ask the hearing examiner about?
It's going to be limited to the review of her recommendation. If you want to get into that, it'd probably be easier just to ask the questions and we'll see where we go from there. We don't want to get into hypotheticals with the hearing examiner and get into any situation where we're evaluating or trying to reevaluate her recommendation on the spot here. That would not be procedurally correct and would cause a number of legal issues. So we want to avoid that.
Okay, well, so let me ask you, Mr. County Attorney, so what actually determines the maximum allowable density of a piece of property? Is it its future land use category?
The maximum permitted density on any property in the county is dictated by your Lee plan, which is the future land use category. With regards to this particular property, it's a sub-outlying suburban category.
So what would be the maximum density that's allowed?
2 units per acre.
2 units per acre. And so the request is 1.9 units per acre under the alternative?
Yes, the application before you is consistent with the density requirements of that future land use category.
So it is consistent with the density that's assigned to it by the Lee plan. So basically what that is we set out rules and said, here's this piece of property. It's on the future land use map. And whoever owns or buys this piece of property, if they stay underneath this 2 units per acre, has the ability to come forward and apply for, the ability to develop it then, I guess. Is that basically the rules? I mean...
That is, in a nutshell, let's say a simplistic way of saying it. The idea is simply that you have a future land use category that sets parameters. Applicants can come in and request development within those parameters, and from just a straight density standpoint, the numbers is consistent with the future land use category.
So say that we did deny the case today, how would a judge look at that if we denied it today and it goes across the street into a real courtroom?
The concept before the court would be whether or not the board's decision is based on competent substantial evidence for that denial, and based on whatever the denial is. If it was straight density and we're just talking about numbers, I wouldn't sit here and allow you to do that without saying, excuse me for a moment. The density number is consistent with the future land use category. That alone is not a sufficient basis for denial. But had you done that, said, we're going to do it anyway, then the court would look at the future land use category, as I'm assuming the applicant would indicate, that is not a sufficient basis to deny the request, and that you do not have competent substantial evidence to do that. The court would then issue an order, presumably indicating to the board that you have exceeded your legal authority.
So is that what the hearing examiner process does then? She takes all of the evidence, right? She hears from the applicant, she hears from the public, she hears all of the evidence, and then she looks at what is the competent substantial evidence, the weight of the evidence, and then she basically looks at what would be the most, I guess, legally defensible decision to make. Is that kind of how it works?
Sort of. The Board of County Commissioners, and this happens everywhere, has adopted land development regulations and comprehensive plan amendments, and regulations that are applicants and property owners are required to meet. The hearing examiner's process is to take the application and apply that application to those requirements that the board has already provided. And if the hearing examiner finds that, based on competent substantial evidence, that the application meets those requirements, then there's a recommendation of approval. And if there's some issues that need to be tweaked through conditioning or straight out denials, that is part of the process. It is a legally defensible position if they are consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Okay. So, I mean, based on, Mr. Chairman, the weight of the evidence that's in front of us. This is a really hard place to be in, because I have so much respect for the public who came and spoke today. I also have respect for the applicant and for the rule of law and property rights as well. And I have, you almost have to put yourself in three different shoes and try to see things from three different angles. Obviously, the public who spoke today, they brought forward a lot of things that seem like, on face value, make a lot of common sense. I mean, they live out there, they have experience with the area. The things that they said were things that make sense. Then you look at the applicant. The applicant's somebody who said, look, I looked at this property and I looked at all the rules regarding how you would develop this property, and I went through and applied, and the staff said, yep, we found your application consistent with all of those rules. And then they went through the public hearing with the hearing examiner, and the hearing examiner went through and said, yep, it's consistent with literally all the rules that would allow this property to be developed in this way. So it's almost like it would be unfair for you to say, hey, you laid out the rules, you told me the rules of engagement, and then I met all of those rules, but now you're still going to deny me anyway. So I kind of understand that, and I think a judge is going to look at a lot of that stuff too, and if we were to deny it. And then the third group that you kind of have to think about is, there are 800,000 people in Lee County. And while, yes, I think there's a lot of great people in here who voted for us today, who we represent, there's also 800,000 people total who are like counting on us today to make a good decision that's not going to end up losing a ton of taxpayer dollars. Because unfortunately, what we've seen in the past is we've seen previous boards of county commissioners deny without having the competent substantial evidence to deny, and they've been ruled against in court, and the developer's gotten millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars and still built anyways. And that was a huge waste of taxpayer dollars. And I mean, sure, it made you look good politically, maybe, I got to be the hero of the day to deny it, but in the end, the community was worse off. So, taking all of those things into consideration and the weight of the evidence into consideration, I appreciate the work that was done at the remand hearing with the staff. I appreciate the work that was done at the hearing examiner with the staff. It's probably not everything everybody wants, but I understand the recommendation for approval, And so I'll go ahead and make the motion as outlined by our staff earlier with that amendment to the condition 6 that they're looking for.
We have a motion for approval.
I'm going to second, but I'd like a couple comments.
Second, go ahead, Commissioner Sindelli.
You know, I start with compatibility, you know, and if this was, we're talking about residential, big picture, residential against residential, okay? You can take all the pieces from that. Obviously, the question comes up about how many units are compatible in there, and I think we've run some of the traps thanks to the questions of what was happening. We do have, and I'll go back to what you said earlier, we have people that are coming here, and we have responsibility also to provide access to housing, whatever that may be and wherever it may be. That's the balance that we're challenged with all the time. How do we respect certain areas? How do we make accommodations for those that are coming here? And I also want to make a comment that, because we've all been through it, the question of profitability comes up with all this. The fact of the matter is, it's a very complex, development is a very complex, whether it's a house, whether it's a community, whatever, it's a very complex process. You've got labor costs, you've got material costs, you've got land costs, you know, and now we're finding it's tough to finance anything. When you put those together, it's not, people can make a case, well, they're making a windfall. Think about what you have to do to spend a certain amount of time out, you know, prospecting for a piece of ground, tie it up, go through the process and the cost of that, and hope that somebody comes out to actually buy the product. So I respect the people that have had properties for a long time, but I also understand the complexities we have as a community, you know, to develop properties in some kind of cost-effective way. And then fortunately, that turns into, you know, an increased number of units to make the numbers work. It's not the primary reason, but it's the reality of what's going on. So those are my thoughts, and I would second the motion.
Thank you for your comment. Commissioner Hammond, thank you for your comments, for laying the background out from the legal side. I wanted to touch on that, but thank you. I want to go back historically. A lot of people in the room here 30 years ago, we remember talking about this property 30 years ago. I remember because one of my best friends lived right across the street, and 30 years ago, I remember us talking about him worrying about it being, there's all kinds of rumors there over the last 30 years. It's going to be apartments, it's going to be public housing, it's going to be a ghetto, all kinds of comments like that. We're always fear of what was going to come there. And I think looking at where we are today, I feel like to me it's a win, it's a loss, because we're still seeing this as far as it being approved. It's made within the legal guidelines, what's proposed under the comp plan and what's allowed in this property. But it's, you know, we're here also because of the remand. So I want to thank staff and hearing examiner and everybody involved for participating in this process. It's been a long 30 years, and we're here today, and it's unfortunate. I know it's residential. It is residential, so it is a little bit different than what my vision of Buckingham is. But unfortunately, like Commissioner Hammond said, and our county attorney says, we're in a position like a judge, basically. You feel like you're having to sentence maybe your best friend to jail or something, because we don't always agree with what we have to do up here, but legally we have to do things within the bounds of our authority here. And I'm going to have to support the motion because it's compatible. There's been no competent substantial evidence brought up today that I can use to deny this. So I would support the item. So any other discussion?
If I could, just two last comments. I thought your comments were fantastic, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much for them. There are two things I wanted to say, just because, well, really just one thing I wanted to say. I think the process that we have to go through is a really brutal process on the residents and the citizens. I think citizens come in here not completely understanding of the competent substantial evidence and the threshold that needs to be met, and they put a lot of time and effort into the things that they say, and you can tell, you know, and they put a lot of heart into that. And it is, you know, it's just really hard because it's not a yes or no decision. It's a decision that has to be based on almost like a quasi-judicial bar, a court-like standard. And so I think there's an opportunity to maybe someday for the zoning system to be reformed. But there was one thing that was said that does get said at a lot of these hearings, that you guys, meaning the commission, are trying to push more housing out into Buckingham. I've been here for 10 years right now, and I've never once said that. We've never had a strategic planning hearing where we said, let's put more housing in Buckingham. The role that we play in the process is more like a judge who, you know, an application is made and we have a responsibility to hear the application. We're just required to. We can't shirk our duties and not hear the application. That's against the law. So that's, you know, I just wanted folks to know that, because I think that's been put out, maybe even, you know, media folks, they may not fully understand the process and might say things like that too, but there's not an all-out effort to put things in Buckingham. It's just where property owners right now are currently applying to make changes to their land use. So, thanks.
And I will say, as both of us, I can say as lifelong residents of Lee County, if you want to help us preserve Lee County, tell your neighbors to sell their property at 2020. We have a great program here called 2020, and tell them to stop selling the large parcels of property like this. And we won't have to deal with this stuff like this or in Alva, because if they don't sell the property, people have the right to sell them, then we won't have these discussions. So try to keep their neighbors from selling their citrus farms and large parcels of land to develop it. So that's the downside of that. Okay, with that, do we have any objections to the motion? No objection, motion passes 3-0. We have no other cases. We are adjourned.